I do want to thank President Paxson for being here and being supportive of this series. I also, in particular, want to thank Daniel and Margaret Loeb, who are proud alum and also parents at Brown, and who are absolutely instrumental in getting one of our dream speakers here. They asked early in the year, I was working with them as interim director. My name is Wendy Schiller. I always feel like people know who I am, but Wendy Schiller, a professor of political science and interim director of the Watson Institute. And I gave them a list. They said, who's your dream team for speakers that you want to bring to Brown? And Van Jones was number one on the list. And we were just absolutely thrilled that you could make the time to be here. So thank you so much. I will read the bio that I've been given, and you can amplify that bio in our conversation. So I'm going to introduce Van Jones, and the run of show will be that we'll be in conversation till about 5:45. Then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience till about 6:15. There'll be a little bit of time after that for an informal chat or saying hello with Van Jones. And then he has got an incredibly busy schedule, so we will usher him out after that. So Van Jones, CNN host, founder of DreamMachine.org, and author of the Van Jones Substack. Van Jones is a U.S. media personality, entrepreneur, and world-class changemaker. He has a rare track record of bringing people together to do hard things in areas as diverse as clean energy solutions, criminal justice reform, and racial inclusion in the tech sector. In 2007, Van was the primary champion of the Green Jobs Act, signed into law by President George W. Bush. In 2009, he worked in the Obama White House as the special advisor for green jobs. In 2018, he helped pass the First Step Act, signed into law by President Donald Trump. The New York Times calls that legislation the most substantial breakthrough in criminal justice in a generation. In 2021, Van Jones was the first recipient of Jeff Bezos' Courage and Civility Award. He has since founded Dream Machine Innovation Lab and launched RapportCompany.co, which uses AI to increase firms' EQ. A Yale Law School graduate, Van is a CNN host, an Emmy Award-winning producer, a 3-time New York Times bestselling author, and as I repeated earlier, the creator of the Van Jones Substack. So welcome to Brown University. Okay, mic's wrong.
Can you read that again? That's good for my self-esteem. I didn't. Wish my mom was here.
We're a very welcoming campus, Brown University. So because we're in a college setting, and some of you have heard me ask this question before, but I love to start the conversation this way. We're in a college setting. So I'd like to begin by asking how your career evolved over time. And are you where you thought you would be when you started out? And how have you created opportunities for yourself in life?
I'm definitely not where I thought I would be. I was born on the edge of a small town in rural West Tennessee, Jackson, Tennessee, in 1968. So we were just starting to desegregate at that time. I lived on a gravel road, no sewer. We had septic tank, no street lights, no sidewalks. My father was born in 1944 in Orange Mound, Memphis. Anybody knows anything about the South? That was the biggest black ghetto in the South. He grew up on Cable Street in Memphis, which was, he basically grew up in what was called a shotgun shack. Now, you guys probably don't know that there are levels to shacks, but there are levels to shack. A shotgun shack is a shack that's so small and the parcel of land is so narrow, each room is behind the next room. So you could fire a shotgun in the front door, hit everybody in the house. It's a shotgun shack. My father grew up in a shotgun home on Cable Street, 1944, in segregation and poverty. He joined the military to get out of poverty. In the 60s, everybody was trying to get out of the military. My dad was trying to get in the military to get out of poverty, got out, and then he put himself through college, went to a little black college called Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee, and married the college president's daughter because my dad had it like that, you see. Willie Jones was no joke. And so they then worked hard to put his little brother, my Uncle Milton, through college. They put my dad's cousins, my Aunt Sylvia, through college. Basically, everybody who got out of poverty in my family, got out of poverty on this bridge called my father's back. And so when my father died, the picture they put of him on the funeral program was him standing in front of Yale Law School the day I graduated with his hands in the air. And so that's where I come from. So we had no conception of Ivy League, no conception of any of these things. My mother was just spending a lot of time trying to convince us we were just as good as the white kids. And that we were just as smart as they were. And that even though we were going into these buildings that they hadn't been allowed into, that we would be all right. So, my mom, she felt, she says, you can do anything you want to. She said, no, my mom being a Southern woman, she said, I ain't gonna visit nobody in jail though. So you can do anything you want to as long as it's honest. So I didn't feel any pressure to be successful, but I felt the freedom to. And I felt that I had something to prove to myself. And so I got an affirmative action scholarship to the University of Tennessee at Martin. Okay, I'm lying. My twin sister, who was good in school, got an affirmative action scholarship, a minority scholarship to the University of Tennessee at Martin. And then she called them and said, why don't you give one to my twin brother? And that way you can put twins in your materials. So I started college on my sister's affirmative action scholarship at the University of Tennessee at Martin. Okay, so the reason I point this out is because I hear some people think that affirmative action is terrible and that DEI is awful. We can talk about that. But I always want to come out the closet right away. But for programs that were specially designed to get kids like me off of the edge of small towns in the rural South and into the doors of higher education, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And so I thought I was going to be a reporter. And I got internships, minority internships. They were trying to desegregate newsrooms in the South. And I saw more racism. My goodness, what are you doing here, sir? Good googly goop. I feel very...
We do have a seat for Congressman Davidson sitting in the front. We reserve the seat in the front. This is what I do in class. They come in late. I make them come all the way to the front.
Hey, now, you should give a round of applause to one of the best Congress people we have in the United States of America.
Yeah. David, the camera. You have to sit over there.
Hey, just scoot over one. Good to see you, sir. And now, if you have to sneak out, I understand. I won't be mad at all. I feel honored that you're here at all. I was telling the story you've heard me tell a million times about growing up in the rural South, and I'm just so glad you're here, sir. And so but when I got to campus, I worked hard. I said, I've got a shot. And I started working in summer times in Southern newsrooms. And I saw racism in the newsroom. We were deliberately covering parts of town to make them look worse than they were. And I was volunteering in the weekends in those towns as a good Christian kid. I was like, there's good people in those parts of town. How come we only put bad stories? So I came back to campus and said, I don't want to do this. And I applied to, and luckily I had a white conservative professor who had worked for the CIA and had worked for Reagan and George H.W. Bush. And he told me he had just come back from a meeting. He saw I was upset. I got a degree in communications. I don't want to be a reporter anymore. I want to go to law school. I want to do something about injustice. I want to do something about racism. I want to do something about these horrible conditions I'm seeing throughout the South. And he said, and rather than him telling me that's ridiculous, Ted Mosh and Gerald Ogg, two conservative white professors at that Southern school, said, we think you can do it. If they had said something different, I would have thought something different, maybe. They said, we think you can do it. And Mosh said, I just came back from a meeting, and the Ivy League law schools are saying they can't find good black students. They can't find good Southern students. And they can't find good students from the public schools, public universities. You're a black kid from a Southern school, public school. Given your grades and given the fact that you've been student government, you've been student newspaper editor, you've started your own newspapers, if you do well on the LSAT, I think you can get there. And I got 96th percentile on the LSAT and wound up accepted to Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Vanderbilt, the whole thing. And in one day, my whole life changed. So I get in my car, drive over the Appalachian Mountains, hit the ocean, take a left, and then drive up the eastern seaboard for the first time. I'd never been north of Kentucky, and get out the car at Yale Law School. And so even there, I was already beyond what I expected. And when I got there, in case anybody here sometimes feels out of place, may not always feel like you fit in, trust me, I couldn't understand the words the students were saying. I would talk to students and they would say, oh, well, you seem to be here for egalitarian purposes. I said, what's that? Egalitarian? You don't know the word egalitarian? I'm like, no. Well, it means, how can we explain it to him? Like, to help? Yeah, I'm here to help other people. Well, that would be paradigmatic of something else. I'm like, what? So I called my father and I said, Daddy, I think I might have made a mistake. I don't fit in here at all. I was smart where I'm from. I'm not smart like these kids. My dad said, you know what? You're right. Those kids are smarter than you because they've read more books than you've read. So in order for you to compete with them, you're going to have to outread them. You're going to have to outwork them. You're going to have to do a lot more work than them. But here's what I know about you. Everything they know that they learned out of a book, you can learn that. But what you know, they're never going to know. They'll never know it. So stick in there. First semester, I didn't do good. Second semester, I did a little bit better. By the time I graduated, I was considered one of the great students there. And a lot of the students will tell you stories about Van Jones at Yale Law School and all this sort of stuff. And they remember everything I did because I was so colorful and because I just raised my hand. What y'all talking about? I don't understand none of this, but I am here to learn to go help my people. And so I left Yale Law School. I went to Oakland, California. Started suing cops. Don't never give a black kid a law degree. Especially 1993. 92 was Rodney King. The jury let the police officers off that beat Rodney King on videotape. So I said, hey, as soon as I got out of law school in 1993, I immediately started suing every cop I could find. 24 years old with dreadlocks, running around, and by the way, sued Jerry Brown, Willie Brown, Gray Davis, suing Democrats, Republicans, I didn't care. And so I was woke before y'all had alarm clocks. I don't want to hear nothing from y'all. So no, I'm not where I thought I would be, and I wish my parents were alive to
well, they're always with you. So I just was looking around just to see, because we always want students to come to these events, or I'm like, I pretty much stand on the sidewalk saying, come. But we have a terrific crowd of people from all ages, different students, different backgrounds. And I can see the students respond to you almost immediately. And I'm a little bit jealous. I've been teaching a long time and I no longer get that. I'm not sure I ever got it, but I think it's really hopeful. It gives you a sense of optimism in a world that's really fraught right now. And so one of the things I wanted to explore with you, I have a side question, but I'll leave it for later, about perhaps why you didn't think maybe Vanderbilt Law, stay in Tennessee, run for governor, run for Senate, run for office there. I guess Harold Ford Sr. and Harold Ford Jr. kind of had the whole Memphis political machine locked up. So
you have answered your own question. Go ahead.
So maybe that's why you didn't stay. But let me talk about your, I wouldn't call it more recent work. I would just call, so your work fighting against and bringing awareness about anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism, which is really something that is so crucial right now. And the roots of cooperation among Black Americans and Jewish Americans span for a very long time, but really came alive in the late 1950s, 1960s civil rights movement. And we've seen in the last, I would say, almost 10 years, sort of a fraying of that coalition. And we don't talk about it so much, particularly because I think the Democratic Party never really wants to talk about it. So if you're on that side of the spectrum, you sort of, well, yeah, it's okay, not really fractured. But I think there are some deep fractures. And could you take us through your journey to come to draw attention to this and why you're focusing on it now, and give us, some answers as to how did this happen?
Well, you got to remember, I was born in 1968. And so we were still, as I said, trying to desegregate. And people act like, Brown versus Board of Education passed and then everybody just started going to school together. That is not what happened at all. Every one of those school boards fought and did not want Black and white students going together. And so lawyers had to come and sue each and every one of those schools. And massively disproportionately, those lawyers who showed up were Jewish. My little county where I grew up in, Madison County, when they integrated the schools, they would let the white principal be the principal of the newly integrated school. The Black principal that had been the principal of the Black school now had to become the assistant principal, and usually also the basketball coach. Okay. And so this went on for years. And so finally, people said, seems to be, some bullshit. So lawyers started coming down and suing, and they were disproportionately Jewish lawyers. So as a young person, that solidarity is how my father got to be a principal of Jackson Middle School. And so this is kind of like in those days, that was the norm. And the Ku Klux Klan hated Blacks and Jews. That was the two groups they hated the most were Blacks and Jews, let alone Blacks and Jews together. And so I knew early on, there's something about Blacks and Jews together that pisses off white nationalists. So I like Blacks and Jews together because I hate white nationalists. So to me, it wasn't, but that's my whole generation. You mentioned something that I want to actually stretch back even further. This collaboration between Blacks and Jews fighting for democracy and civil rights and whatever, it actually goes all the way back to 1909. 1909, you got to understand, America then is not a constitutional democracy. They lie to you and tell you in 1776 you had no, you didn't. In 1776, you had a slave state on stolen land with a few people able to vote. That is not a constitutional democracy. And then after a couple of hundred years of that, then they had a civil war to upgrade to racist terror and apartheid. So you got centuries now where on paper it says it's a democratic republic, but in reality, you have a racist terror state and Blacks and Jews' backs were against the wall in 1909. Jewish people being discriminated against. Jewish people weren't even considered white. And Black people being discriminated against. And a miracle happens in 1909 where some Black activists and some Jewish activists sat down together and said, what if we turn this place into an actual constitutional democracy? Now you have to understand how outrageous that idea is. Okay, at no point in human history has a racist terror state been transformed into a constitutional democracy. It's never happened in 10,000 years of human history. So to have activists sitting around even thinking about that is a little bit nuts. But they said, let's try it. So we should create an organization. What should we call this organization? Well, we can't call it the Black organization because we got Jews here. You can't call it the Jewish organization because you got Blacks here. Let's call it the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, which is a Black Jewish alliance that begins the process of trying to turn this thing into an actual constitutional democracy. The next year, another set of Blacks and Jews sit down, have the same idea. They create an organization we now call the Urban League in 1910. And then if you look, every decade after that, disproportionately on the front lines, you have Jewish activists and Black activists, and some activists that are both Black and Jewish, fighting to deepen and defend democracy. And lest you think this is kind of like a one-way street, like Jewish people come and help Black people. No, that's not true. When Hitler starts murdering at industrial scale Jews in Europe, white Americans are so anti-Jewish, they don't want Jews to come. Don't forget the SS Liberty comes full of Jews and gets sent back to Hitler. White Americans don't want Jews here, despite the fact that Hitler is mass murdering them. But there was a loophole that said that scholars could come, academics could come, if they could get a visa. Well, how do you get a visa? A college has to invite you. White colleges are not inviting Jews. So the Black colleges raise our hand. And we say, send us your scholars. Send us your scholars. And so Black colleges start saving white Jewish professors from Europe. So if you look back at all the HBCUs, you look back, you have a bunch of Black teachers, and then Howard 10, you know what I mean? Like these Jews. And you're like, what the hell? It's because you've had this thing going on, right? You get to the 60s, the rabbi and Dr. King, the famous picture. You've got Freedom Summer, 1964. 2 Jewish kids and a Black get murdered trying to get Black people to vote in Mississippi. By the way, and it keeps going. When you save my butt, leaving the Obama administration. Who walks into 1909 is Blacks and Jews fighting. 2008, Obama gets elected. 2009, who walks in? Michelle, Barack, David Axelrod, Rahm Emanuel. It's just Blacks and Jews and Blacks and Jews and Blacks and Jews and Blacks and Jews. It's like
I did not know David Axelrod was Jewish.
Yes, of course.
I knew that Rahm Emanuel was Jewish.
Yes. But so you think about that. So now people can overstate this. So let's just back it up. It's not like all Black people loved all Jewish people and all Jewish people loved all Black people. That's bullshit. No. You always had some Black people didn't like Jews. You've always had some Jews didn't like Black people. We all have some terrible cousins and asshole uncles. Everybody, that's just known, okay? That's not remarkable. What's remarkable is the best folks in the Jewish community and the best folks in the Black community, despite all our ups and downs, have always found a way to work together. That's what's so remarkable. And why is that? You have to ask the question, because there are other groups. You had Puerto Ricans, you had Irish. Why are these two groups continuing to show up and do this hard work of deepening and defending democracy? It's because the cultural DNA of the Jewish community, after 3,000 years of getting chased out of every country, 3,000 years of having to have a go bag packed ready to go in case the Cossacks came or a pogrom, they always had this idea called repair of the world, tikkun olam. And so they whispering that into the ears of their children, even as they're on the run. And so that cultural DNA of repair of the world is some powerful stuff. Black community has a different cultural DNA, justice for all. Now, Black people are very, very strange in this regard. Black people, when we say justice for all, we mean that. That's why you see Black people on the front. Black people have been, until very, very recently, the biggest champions of immigrant rights. Now, the economists have always told us, no, the immigrants are coming here taking your jobs. You're competing at the lower levels of education. The immigrants are bad for you. And Black people say, and when you get finished talking, take your racist ass over there, because we're not going to let anybody in this country be mistreated, even if there's economic competition. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. The Black church, justice for all. The Black church on the book still says, ain't nobody supposed to be gay. Even though they know the choir director gay, the organist gay, everybody up in here gay, but on paper, well, that's a sin, right? And that same preacher will be preaching that fire and brimstone against gay folk on Sunday. On Tuesday, we'll have a whole buses going to vote to protect the gays. Because even if we think it's quote unquote, even if supposedly we think it's not right, we don't want anybody to be treated wrong. Justice for all. Black people are amazing. So you take a cultural DNA of justice for all and a cultural DNA of repair the world, and you put them together, you get a double helix of hope for humanity. A double helix of hope for humanity that has just consistently produced this just proportionate alliance. And yet, it's kind of a hidden history. We don't talk about it in those terms because for the past 50 years, Jewish people want a kind of holiday from history. So basically, Black people just think we have a bunch of cool white friends, right? I mean, like, we don't really even code our Jewish friends as Jewish. All Jewish people know that their Black friends are Black. Almost no Black people know that our Jewish friends are Jewish. That's like always like a shock. Like, what? We just thought it was a bunch of cool white people. It's like, no, actually, it's mostly a bunch of cool Jews. So, and Black people just don't know. So, you know, like, people, I don't know Jewish people. It's like, okay, how about your friend Rachel? How about her? How about your homeboy Jared? How about public defender attorney Gold? They Jewish? Yes. Oh, okay, I guess they are cool. Yes, yes. So, yeah, when you have a hidden history and a whole group of people doesn't even know, then it becomes easy for the differences to become much more profound. Because there is a reality that for most Black people, look, if you have white skin, you went to college and you're male, you have a hard time convincing me that you're oppressed. That's not our experience of oppression. Our experience of oppression is if you're brown and you didn't go to college and you ain't got no money, that's oppressed. So the Jewish community comes to me now and says they feel vulnerable and they feel oppressed, and I'm confused as to what y'all even talking about because I don't see you in these housing projects and these prisons. And so that is the fault of the progressive left. The past 20 years, the same period you're talking about, we went hard on anti-Black racism as we needed to, hard on sexism, hard on sticking up for working people, but we left out 3,000 years where one group was the original victims of discrimination, and by the way, invented something called social justice activism. How I know? Moses, like the first social justice dude. Let my people go. I'm like, oh, so y'all started this stuff? We don't talk about it in those terms. And so, look, Black people, I'm gonna be very honest now, we are friends here. We're anti-war people. Don't get mad at us. We're anti-war people. Dr. King and Muhammad Ali did not support the Vietnam War. When George W. Bush went to war with Iraq, 80% of white folk were in favor of going to war with Iraq. 80% of Black people were not. So we're anti-war people now. So when you start seeing wars breaking out and little people getting hurt, Black people gonna be, I'm not cool with that at all. And so that creates a crack. And it creates, now suddenly we're exposed that Black folks have not been thinking about Jewish people's problems for 50 years. And Jewish people have been thinking about Black folks' problems for the whole time. So now there's an imbalance. And if you were somebody who hated democracy, one of the best things, the smartest things you could do, exploit that crack. If you can push Blacks and Jews apart, if you can get the Jews to say, most Jews who in the United States are not Black, well, it's all about DEI. That's why everybody's mad at you. See, DEI is getting people to hate the Jews. This woke stuff. So you come over here, be anti-woke with us, be anti-DEI with us, And Jewish people say, well, I'm not feeling supported. I do feel very vulnerable. I'm going to go over here and do this. Now, the Jews, from our point of view, look like they're becoming more and more anti-Black. They're doing it out of their own vulnerability and their own sense of alarm. But these little crappy DEI programs have not even delivered nothing for us. But it's all we have. And so you're going to tell us we can't even have this? I'm looking at you funny. Then you come over to the Blacks and say, hey, come here. Look at these dead Gaza babies. Look at Trump supporting the Jews. He's not supporting you. Come over here and be with us. You say, well, you know what? These dead Gaza babies, this is terrible. And Trump is saying you can't even put a picture of a Black person on a website. But yeah, I'm going to go. Now, who's winning? You have Black people sounding more anti-Israel and more anti-Jewish. Jewish people sounding more Black. Who loves that? Authoritarians love that. Now you finally split the Blacks and the Jews. White nationalists love that. You finally split the Blacks and the Jews, right? Russia loves that. You finally split the Blacks and the Jews. If you can split the Blacks and the Jews, who's going to defend democracy now? See? So I'm like, look, we have to be as sophisticated as the problems that we face. We can and should love and support the Palestinians, the Muslims, the Arabs, the Persians, who are often the victims of anti-Muslim hate and bias. We have to love and defend and support the Jews and the Israelis, who are often the victim of anti-Jewish hatred and double standards and all kind of nonsense. And Black people are in a good position to help with this because we have Black people who are Christian, Black people who are Muslim, and we have Black people who are Jews. And so we can play a role, if we stay together, of rebuilding that alliance for the next 100 years, the Black-Jewish alliance, and also helping the victims of anti-Muslim hatred. But if you get tricked, you see, by geopolitical adversaries who don't care nothing about Black people or Jews or Muslims into fighting each other, then you've done your enemy's job for them. So that's why I'm so passionate.
So following up on that, I want to ask a question about opportunity and then a question about the 2024 campaign. So in terms of opportunity, there's sort of a mantra growing among visible progressive, they happen to all be white men, as far as I can tell from recent publicity tours, that are saying that government itself is failing those who need it most, that the progressive expansion of government has left it inefficient and it has not provided the kinds of ladders up, the kinds of opportunities, the kinds of healthcare, safety, good housing in communities that are underprivileged, that may or may not be Black, may or may not be Latino, may or may not be heavily immigrant. But that somewhere along the line, it sounds great, but it lost its way and it doesn't work. And it seems to be aligning with people who are supporting President Trump's efforts to pare down or reform the federal government. And there are some Jews that occupy both space and some prominent Black leaders that occupy both of those spaces. So what's your take on this sort of new movement that may be a source of realignment, of reconnection between Blacks and Jews? And do you buy it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, Doge is some bullshit. So I wanted to start with that because when they first came out with it, I was excited because I worked in government. And I had my own experience of government bureaucracy and red tape getting in my way. When I worked for President Obama, we were trying to, we had a $377 billion stimulus package. In those days, that was a lot of money. Remember when 370, now it's like nothing. But that was such a big stimulus package, they called it socialism in 2009. And about $80 billion was supposed to go for green and clean solutions, solar, wind, batteries, et cetera. And I ran President Obama's interagency process to get that $80 billion out the door. Now, I wanted to make sure that $80 billion went to people who needed it, people who were in Michigan, people who were in Appalachia, people who were on Native American reservations. I was trying to get that money to where it could do some good in the hood. And I had to deal with so much bureaucracy. I wanted to get wind energy deployed on Native American reservations. If you were on this side of the reservation line, the basically the white side, you could go get a permit, business loan, and get going. On the Native American side of the reservation, you had to go to the Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Department of Interior. It was so many things in the way. And so I had an initiative called Green Scissors for the Red Tape. Just trying to get the Native Americans a little bit of peace. I'm like, we done pushed the Native Americans off all the good land. They out here where it's hot and windy and dusty. Well, surprise, surprise, that'd be a good place for a wind farm. That'd be a good place for solar energy. Why can't we at least do something with them? And it was terrible. So when they first came with Doge, I was like, good, somebody's gonna do something. And then guess what? It turned out to be, you're gonna be shocked to hear this, a scam. It's a scam. This is not the way to reduce government inefficiency. You fire all the good people, throw them out the door. It's going to make everything more inefficient and more crazy, and people are losing all their jobs and all their help. You're freezing up all the universities. The students don't know if they're going to get a job. This is a complete scam. Why? I hope this is not going to make anybody unable to sleep tonight. But there's a guy named Curtis Yarvin. Raise your hand if you've heard the name Curtis Yarvin like Marvin. Okay, a few of you guys who cannot sleep. A Brown graduate. That's sad. Curtis Yarvin is terrible. He is a horrible philosopher in the group with Peter Thiel. He believes, why am I talking about Curtis Yarvin? First, let me tell you who he is. He believes that black people were harmed when we were freed from slavery. He believes America should not have a democracy. He thinks we should have a CEO monarch. In other words, a king, in other words, a dictator. Curtis Yarvin. You say, well, who cares about Curtis Yarvin? It's some idiot. Surprise, surprise. Who quotes Curtis Yarvin? J.D. Vance. Who backs Curtis Yarvin? Peter Thiel. What is Curtis Yarvin's solution for America? He came up with a 7-step plan to get rid of democracy. What's the first step? The first step is called RAGE. Retire all government employees. Retire all government employees. Wait a minute. That sounds like what Doge is doing. Just fire everybody. What's the second step? Grab all the data so you can control everything. Now, in a normal coup, you send in a bunch of young men with guns. Whatever's going on, they send in a bunch of young men with laptops. What's the first thing they did? They grabbed all the data. This is a scam, folks. This is a tech takeover to change the way our government works permanently. You say, well, that's silly, man. Why would you say that about our wonderful tech entrepreneurs? I love our tech entrepreneurs, but look how they get down, though. How do they get down? Break all the rules and then say what you're going to do about it. How did Uber get started? Broke all the taxi rules and said what you're going to do about it. How did Airbnb get started? Break all of the residential rules and say what are you going to do about it? That's how they get down. And so Silicon Valley, there are 4 corners of power in this country. They'll never tell you this in school, I'll tell you. There's 4 corners of power. Washington, D.C. is one corner of power for the democracy. Wall Street is another corner of power for finance. Some would call it the plutocracy. Silicon Valley is another corner of power. Technology, the technocracy. And then Hollywood is the 4th corner of power for the mediaocracy. See what I did? So, just seeing who's awake. So the Silicon Valley guys, what do? First, they ate up Hollywood, streaming services, social media, right? We're completely disrupted by them. Then they start trying to eat up Wall Street, crypto, DeFi. And this is Silicon Valley now eating up DC with Doge. This is a scam. It's a tech takeover. It has nothing to do with anything that they're selling you on. And I'm disgusted by it.
Well, don't hold back. So I know there'll be so many questions, and I want to be mindful of time. So I'm going to truncate some of the questions that I was going to ask you. And so for those people in the room that are looking to say, okay, it's only March.
Love you, sir. Hey, give this guy a round of applause. This is one of our best in the world. One of the best in the world. Thank you, sir.
So for those people who say it's only March and we feel disempowered or powerless, what can we do? Meaning whether you may want lower taxes, but you also want the Social Security Bureau to be functioning, or some of the people we've seen in the town halls in Republican districts who say, I'm a white guy, I'm a veteran, I voted Republican, I didn't sign up for this. And we're seeing this in North Carolina and Oregon. We're seeing it all over the country, Georgia. So when we have that, what, from your skills of coalition building, your skills of communication, Kamala Harris lost for lots of reasons. Where should people start in terms of saying, okay, maybe government is inefficient, maybe it's bloated, maybe we can do it differently, but there are fundamental services that mean people live or die, or they're housed or they're not housed, or they get remedial math and reading in their elementary schools. How do we protect the things that we care about in this new age?
I don't have a good answer. I can tell you how I see it. There are a few arenas that people who are concerned about the way this is being done can fight back. One of the courts, and I'm very proud that very brave lawyers and very brave law firms and very brave judges are trying to keep us from going down a pathway where you have a lawless president. I mean, either the president's constrained by law or he's not. If you have a president, she's not constrained by law, then she's lawless. And they always run the same playbook. These authoritarians, they always run the same playbook. I'm doing this because of terrorists or because of Nicaraguan gangs or whatever it is to get you all, do whatever you want. And then once they do it to this group, then they come to the next and the next and the next and the next. And then pretty soon you have a lawless president and a lawless country, or a country where the law is the president. That's called dictatorship. So in the courts, I'm proud. The other place we had some leverage was Congress with the budget fight. And that's one reason people are so upset with Schumer, because people felt like we gave away leverage and didn't get anything. My leader and teacher is Nancy Pelosi. As a California Democrat, some people may like her less or more than others, but she's shrewd. Nobody's ever said she wasn't a shrewd tactician. And she said that she thought that Schumer gave away too much and got nothing back. And I take her very seriously. There's not a more shrewd battlefield tactician than Nancy Pelosi. She was disappointed in Chuck Schumer. So that's a big setback.
It is. Let me push you a little bit on that. Mm-hmm. Nancy Pelosi is one of her greatest talents, but she always knew exactly how many votes she needed, and she never put a bill on the floor if she didn't think it would pass. It was good instruction to be a department chair. I never went into a meeting thinking, I don't know who's going to vote which way. What happened in 2024? The Democrats, did they really think they had votes that didn't materialize? Yeah. So when you think about Nancy Pelosi's lessons and thinking forward for the Democrat Party, how does that work in terms of mobilizing now? Where are the people that will rise up if they are led? Where are the votes? And what seems to have been missing in terms of reading the tea leaves on voters?
Well, I mean, Democratic Party just did two things that are just dumb. First, we were defending a broken status quo that nobody likes. Nobody likes how things are working right now. And so our argument was, we're going to defend a broken status quo, saying, if you think you're miserable now, it turns out that's not a really great bumper sticker. You're going to be way more miserable under Trump. Vote for me. So that's dumb. And then, so you're defending a broken status quo that nobody likes, and then you're offending half the country, calling everybody racist and sexist and transphobic every 20 seconds. So if you So that just turns out to not be as attractive a party platform as people thought. Now, well-intentioned, you don't want the country taken over by an authoritarian, and you don't want people to be discriminated against based on their identities. But the way that it was handled just played right into the hands. But that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is we got beat in places that we didn't know existed. See, we thought that we were using the old playbook. I put myself in this. And don't laugh at me, Sperling. I've been trying to tell you the whole time. My brother over here. So we were using an old playbook of, and you saw if you have a television, it's a box. Never mind, you don't watch TV.
They watch TV on their phones.
Yeah, okay, good. So you may have seen some clips of us, me and Anderson Cooper, and we're talking, and but we said, okay, look, you have black voters, and suburban voters, and swing voters, and all this old stuff that sounds like 1994. And Trump had a completely different approach to politics. He said, look, I only have one goal. I need to make the electorate 3% more masculine. If I can make the electorate 3% more male, I will win. So screw policy, screw all that. I'm throwing the garbage can. How do I get more men to come out? So he identified 3 masculinist subcultures. Number 1, crypto. 50 million Americans have bought crypto in the past 5 years. Every one of those purchases is a prayer for a better tomorrow. It's a lottery ticket for a better tomorrow. The Biden administration is crushing crypto. So he went and got all those crypto folks on his team. Then he said, I'm going to deal with the UFC, WWE, all the fighting stuff, Hulk Hogan, all that ignorant stuff. And then it turns out that's bigger than baseball. So uncontested, he goes and gets the crypto bros. Uncontested, he goes and gets all the mixed martial arts people. And then, shockingly, he goes and says, the wellness community, which used to be a high trust, yoga and kale and Michelle Obama, right? After COVID, became a low trust, anti-vax, anti-corporate RFK world. So he goes and gets RFK Jr. Everybody goes, well, he's a conspiracy theory and a nut. Good luck with that. Kamala comes out of our convention ahead of Donald Trump. As soon as RFK Jr. endorses Trump, he pulls even and ahead and there's no looking back. He goes and gets 3 masculinist subcultures, uncontested, that we didn't even think about. And then it gets worse than that. Then he's talking to them on these platforms that we don't even know exist. He's talking to them on Twitch and Kick and all these platforms that sound like somebody's in the emergency room. What are these platforms? What the hell is this? And we think that we're the mainstream media. I was talking to Madam President about that. We're not the mainstream media. If you were a Martian, you came to Earth and you decided to just mathematically look, when I'm sitting next to Anderson Cooper in prime time, I'm talking about 1.2 million people. Down the street on Fox, we're talking to 3.2 million. That's not the problem, Democrats. The problem is there's some Twitch streamer named Kai Cenat or something who's talking to 14 million people on Twitch. I don't even know what that is. And so we woke up in a body bag because this guy has completely revolutionized politics. And we assume everybody's watching CNN and reading the New York Times, and people have moved on. So you have the wrong messengers. All these people who went to college think they know everything. The wrong message, if you think you're miserable now. The wrong message capacity. We spent $1 billion on crappy TV ads when none of y'all even watch television. So you can't be mad at Donald Trump when you're that dumb.
All right. I'm not touching that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask people who have questions to line up. We have microphones on each side. We're going to go sort of side to side. And all we want to do is just ask you to be cognizant of time and ask questions. And if I don't hear a question, I'm going to ask for the question. So, Madam, you want to start?
Hello? It works. Okay. So, hi, my name's Aida. I have 2 questions that I will rapid fire and you answer at your will. So, my first one is regarding your work in justice reform. Has that shifted through the administrations, particularly in this current one? How has your approach evolved through different administrations, particularly with the influx of high-profile actors like Jeff Bezos, the $100 million that he gifted you? How has that helped you to deepen your work and impact? And then the second one, which is I'm working in public health at the moment, crying sad tears right now. But and our work is majority funded in this state by federal grants. So we are bracing for impact and the large potential of us losing our jobs. I myself rely on my faith, so I rely on God. I know that He'll always take care of me and things like that. But I think there's a lot of fear within my organization, even within myself that I have to stop. But I want to know what advice you have for government workers like us enduring through this administration.
Why don't we just get all 5 questions and then I can be more efficient in terms of answering. So I got your 2.
So we're gonna go left, right. Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. I really like your comment about making the Trump electorate much more masculine. You didn't. I really like the comment you made about Trump making his electorate much more masculine. You also didn't mention Joe Rogan and incels, which I think are also communities he very much reached out to. And that's something I'm deeply worried about. As a young woman, potentially, marrying, dating guys in this room who are my age. How do you see why that divide between young men and women is so deep right now? Looking at the data, and what can we do considering that we do need to coexist, very, very productively together in our entire lives. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aya. I'm a class of 2013 grad. I just wanted to thank you first for being here. Thank you, Dr. Schiller, for bringing him here, and just thank you for wearing your Blackness. Thank you for wearing your background, your experience, the way that you do is truly inspirational. I know a lot of people in this room, perhaps, who come from backgrounds similar. It really is inspiring and encouraging. So my question really is around that. I'm someone who has been very vocal as a Brown student, as an alum, have been part of boards and things like that up until we had a recent place in this world where, I chose to stand on the side of community, and speaking and using my voice in that way may have gotten me blacklisted, or I guess you're at brown listed. You are one of those voices that has navigated storms, and I see beyond diplomacy, I just see a real intentional way of finding the place to be, to say the things that need to be said, and to defend where we need to hear that defense. And I just am curious as to how you've looked at your journey of kind of towing that line, kind of making sure you're at the table, making sure you're able to be on that platform, making sure you're able to use your voice powerfully while not ending up being silenced or kicked out. How you've navigated that, particularly the young people and all people here who might be struggling to figure that out themselves.
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm Malcolm. I'm a sophomore. I want to ask you about this gender question. So the right has galvanized support, particularly from young males. The Democrats ran a woman in 2016 and lost. The Democrats ran a man in 2020 and won, and then a woman in 2024 and lost. So number one, is the electorate prepared to elect a female president? And if so, is she going to have to be a Republican? Or will the electorate elect a Democratic woman?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. My name's Nathan. I'm a sophomore. Respectfully, is there anything looking back that you would have done differently in your coverage and scrutiny of President Biden's mental health leading up to the debate in June? And more broadly, what steps can the media take to repair the trust in Americans that feel they were misled for years about his condition? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Goni Wong. I'm a high schooler. And I was just wondering, what do you think is the future of the Democratic Party? You said they're defending a broken status quo, but you've also critiqued the progressive left, which kind of looks towards the future. So who do you think new party leadership is going to be? What do you think a new nationwide strategy will be following this election? And what should the policy agenda be of the DNC?
Very simple questions, not. Professor Diva Woodley.
Hello. Actually, this is a question that's following up a little bit and pressing a little bit on what I think was a magnificently comprehensive analysis. But I'm not sure that it's true that the strategy that the Democratic Party pursued was one where they didn't know what was going on. I think it might be that they weren't listening to the people who did. And so my question is about generational replacement and leadership, sort of building on the work of Jake Grumbach about gerontocracy, because that's one thing that I think is worth talking about, is thinking through, we sort of make fun of, or many people make fun of Elon Musk and his 19-year-olds, right, go with Doge, but he has his 19-year-olds with him. On the Democratic side, where's the place for the young people and their leadership, right? The people who were sort of like running Harris's campaign in the beginning and then who were sidelined. What do we do about that?
Okay, does anyone have any hard questions? just trying to. So look, these are great questions, and I will try to be efficient in answering them. The fourth question about navigating storms and avoiding getting kicked out. I did get kicked out, and if it had not been for Professor Brooks, is that okay? I can't call you by your first name. I want to be no, it's fine. Okay. Eddie Glaude still calls you Nolaway. So, but if it weren't for Professor Brooks reaching out to me when I left the Obama White House under fire, and then it turns out that your president here conspired with Professor Brooks to get me a job at Princeton, I wouldn't have had a second chance. It's easy to get blown up. You're not the first one that got blown up. The question is, and in case you guys don't know, I was a left-wing, berserkly activist, proudly so, on the left side of Pluto in my 20s, suing cops and fighting prisons. And a lot of stuff that I said when I got to the Obama White House suddenly became controversial. And I wound up leaving the Obama White House under fire. And everybody thought it was over. Noliwe. I've been calling you Nolaway the whole time because Eddie Glaude told me that that's the right way to say it. So I was misled. Anyway, so Professor Brooks and others reached out and said, we're not going to let this brother fall. Donna Brazil reached out, and others. So you're going to make mistakes. That's a part of it. But we should have grace. And we should have second, third, fourth, and fifth chances for people who are trying. That said, I think it's important to listen well. When you're dealing with some of the issues that we're dealing with now, especially when you're dealing with post-October 7th politics, it's important to listen very well. Because there are principles, if you stick with them, you can navigate these waters and you can show that you really do love and care about everybody and you respect everybody and you aren't picking and choosing your moral outrages. And I think you're required to do that. I don't think that's optional, right? So, but this is a very tough game. And what I would say for my progressive friends, we spent a good chunk of the past 5-10 years canceling each other, calling each other out and not calling each other in, critiquing each other. And I think it left us quite weak when the real fight came. But please don't think you're not going to make mistakes. I've said stuff on national TV that while I was saying it, I was like, can I please get that back? Can I? No, it was live. Oh Lord, it's gonna be a rough 6 months. So, I just wanted to say that. Now, and it's all right. And it's all right. They're not putting no dogs on you. They're not putting no dogs on you. They're not putting no fire hoses on you. They ain't got a tree for you. So, a lot of this stuff is, we got to remember context. Whatever they're doing is not what they used to do. Sometimes you say stuff that's wrong, or you said it the wrong way. Apologize, sit down, get the feedback, pray about it, and get back in this fight. Because we need you, whatever it was. Now, that's why the other question. That's important, though. It's important. Look, justice reform, I fought under Democrat and Republican governors, presidents. I want to say something that's going to surprise a lot of people. You know who the person I had the most success with justice reform? Donald Trump. That shocks a lot of people. But Daniel Loeb, our good friend, and myself, Kim Kardashian, and others, literally sat with him. I literally sat in the White House with Donald Trump on this side of the Resolute desk. He's on that side of the Resolute desk. Kim Kardashian is right here. Ivanka is right there. And Jared Kushner is right there. This is not the start of a joke. This is real life. And I'll tell you something. I appealed to this man to try to get him to understand criminal justice reform, and I utterly failed. I think I'm a pretty good talker. Everything I said made him less likely to be helpful. And then Kim reached over and tapped my leg. Would you please shut up? And I watched Kim Kardashian. It was like watching a ballerina hypnotize a grizzly bear. She was so skillful in appealing to him. He had talked about the forgotten man. She says, nobody more forgotten, Mr. President, than somebody in prison. And skillfully supported Jared Kushner, whose father had gone to federal prison, by the way. So he knew that what we were fighting for was right. And Jared Kushner, by the way, say what you want to about Jared, he fought like hell to get that bill done. And when Donald Trump signed the bill for First Step Act in the Oval Office, he handed me the pen. And 40,000 people came home from prison. I didn't say 40. 40,000. And the vast majority never got in trouble again. The most successful prison reform in the history of prisons, signed by Donald Trump. And he handed me the pen in the Oval Office. So if you don't believe in miracles, I don't know what to tell you. But why was that bill so effective? Because both sides went back and forth trying to figure out what could we actually agree on. And what did we start with? We started with women. We started with dignity for incarcerated women. We said, remember? So women are being, Sperling was a part of it too. Women are being mistreated in federal prison. They're being shackled when they're delivering babies. They're being brutalized. So we started with dignity for incarcerated women, and then we just grew and we snowballed that thing. So if you believe in something, you're talking about faith. God's not finished with miracles. You think that you're going through something tough for no reason? See, pain is a gift from the gods of growth. When God wants you to grow, that's when the pain comes. No pressure, no diamonds. Why are Black people so amazing? We've been through so much. Why are Jewish people so amazing? They've been through so much. Every one of their holidays, they tried to kill us. It didn't work. Let's eat. Every holiday, same thing. So, right? So, yes, this is terrible what you're going through. But you have the ability. I don't know what to tell you guys about this stuff. Look, we're in trouble. I don't know. I don't. But I'm not optimistic and I'm not pessimistic. I'm determined. That's different. I'm determined. I'm not going to let bad people win. And so, you ask some specific questions I can answer quickly. With this male-female divide, I'm going to say some stuff y'all not going to want to hear. But you're going to have to legalize chivalry. I'm going to say it again. You create a situation where the feminist culture tells you, if you're a guy, don't cry because you're the problem. You're toxic, you're this, you're that. So the feminists tell you don't cry because what are you crying about? You're the problem. The masculinists tell us don't cry because boys don't cry. So we can't have no feelings except anger or shame. So liberal boys are all shamed and Republican boys are all mad. If you want something better, you're going to have to legalize chivalry. Why? Because if we're going to be honest, it's 3 kinds of dudes. Among dudes, I'm going to tell you how dudes talk. 3 kinds of dudes. There's the prey, the guys that get pushed around, the prey, the guys that get bullied, the guys try to please everybody, try to fit in with the liberals and hope we don't get in trouble. The prey. Then there's the predators, the bullies, the assholes. Between those two, most people would rather be on the asshole side. So if those are the only options you're going to allow men, you're going to have a bunch of sad men and a bunch of mad men and nobody that you want to deal with. There's got to be a third way out for men. Not the prey, not the predator, but the protector. The good, strong man who's going to use his strength to protect people who are not strong. I didn't say a good person. I didn't say a good American. I didn't say a good carbon-based life form. I said a good man. And I have 4 children, 3 of them are boys. They will be men when they grow up, in all likelihood. And I want them to be good men. And if when you say, I want you to be a good man, and if you are strong, I want you to be stronger, and I want you to use your strength for good. Don't you let nobody in your presence be mistreated. You stand up and protect people. Oh, well, now that's another form of sexism, Dan. We don't need any protection. Would you shut up with that? I know you don't need protection, women, but men need to be able to feel like they have something to offer. So can you legalize chivalry? Can you legalize nobility? Can you let a man be a man and feel good? That doesn't take anything away from the women. I'm not saying to consent to nothing you don't want to consent to. I'm not talking about, otherwise you are giving the Trumps, giving the authoritarians way more men than they should ever have. I want to be able to call men to a higher purpose than Donald Trump. I want to give men a better mission than Donald Trump. I want to be able to say you are worthy of a better cause than Donald Trump. And I want to be able to say that as a man to a man. And so you have to legalize chivalry or you're going to have more of this stuff. And then, in most countries, the women who become presidents or prime ministers usually do come from the right. But I don't think that's going to happen in this country. I think Gretchen Whitmer, I just don't think that party is going to allow that to happen, so don't worry about it. With Biden, I did not know that Biden was as bad off as he was until he walked out on that stage. And Anderson, I can only tell you my team, and Anderson Cooper didn't either. Anderson had just interviewed Biden, 4 weeks earlier with his Grief podcast. And as soon as Anderson came back, we asked him, how was Biden? And Anderson, who does not lie, as you know, Anderson does not lie. I wish he would lie. He does not lie. He'd be on TV looking at you like, I'm like, Anderson, can you please keep a game face? Anderson could be looking at you like, on live television. So Anderson does not lie. He said he was great. He said Biden was great. And so I don't know if they were only putting him out there when he was good and hiding him. I don't know. But we made a big mistake because when he walked out there, everybody at CNN was shocked. And I immediately called for him to get out of the race. And I love Joe Biden. I worked for Joe Biden. People say I was in the Obama administration, but I worked for Joe Biden. Don't forget that. So it was hard for me to say he needed to go, but he needed to go. And as far as the generational stuff, exactly. All those young folks in Philadelphia trying to tell these people none of these talking points were working on the doors and being shut down, and they had to sneak and create their own separate parallel campaign in Philadelphia because the campaign wouldn't listen to them. That's terrible. And by the way, the same sorry people in the Democratic Party, when they win, is them, and when they lose, it's us.
But who do you mean by us?
The grassroots, the leftists, the progressives, whatever. We're just all just too dumb to vote for them. And so, but they took $1 billion and burned it on these stupid TV ads that were not any good and that nobody watched because nobody watches television. The other side took $1 billion and built an infrastructure of podcasts and YouTubers that'll be here forever. You can't blame the grassroots for that. And the young people could have told them and tried to. So it's not just generational change. The Democratic Party has a bunch of arrogant, mean people at the top. They are condescending. They don't even treat me right. And I'm old. So, no, I have nothing good to say about them. They have to be replaced.
Except for Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi is a goddess, and if you talk about her, you're going to have to fight me. And then the last thing about the future Democratic Party. I have no idea and don't have to know because it's not my job. But I will tell you this, and then we'll be done because I got to pee. I will tell you this. I'll tell you what they told me when I was in church as a child. The preacher told a story about a young boy that was trying to trick the elder. And this young boy said, I hate this elder. This elder thinks he's so smart. And I'm going to prove this elder doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to prove this elder is a fool. So here's what I'm going to do. He said, got all the kids together. He said, watch this. So he got a little bird in his hand. He said, come with me. And he walks up to the elder and he says, Mr. Elder, if you're so smart, tell me if the bird in my hand is alive or dead. You tell me that and show me how smart you are. Now, the elder was not a fool. In fact, the elder was very wise. What the elder realized was, if he said the bird was alive, the boy was going to crush the bird and then open his hand and show him a dead bird. But if he said the bird was dead, the bird would open his hand and the bird would fly away. So the elder was trapped. And so the elder, being an elder and being truly wise man, said, son, I don't know if that bird is alive or dead. Here's what I do know. It's in your hands. It's in your hands. That's why I say to you young people, I don't know if democracy is alive or dead, but it's in your hands. It's in your hands. There is a lot that you can do. If you think the people my age and older are going to figure out how to get on Twitch, I can save you a lot of time. For the first time ever, the young generation has equal or more communications capacity than the old generation. I don't know what is going to get these young people to vote different or to think different or to care different, but I bet you've got better ideas than I do. And whatever you are afraid of, other people have gone through worse. Other countries have gone through worse. Other ethnic groups have gone through worse. People in your own family have gone through worse. And they didn't back down, and they didn't bow down, and they didn't give up, and you don't have the right to. You do not have the right to give up. You don't have the right to fan yourself and faint and fall out and talk about your trauma. You know who had real trauma? Your grandparents. You know what they never talked about? Their trauma. They worried about you. And there are people coming behind you you need to be worried about. And with that, I'm going to go pee. Thank you very much.